I brought the sweet potato casserole and a black eye to Thanksgiving. The bruise sat on my cheek like a storm cloud over a quiet suburb, and when I took my seat at the end of the table in Naperville, Illinois, forks stopped mid-air and the football game on mute seemed to get louder. Emily lifted her glass and without a blink said, "The old man got what he deserved. My husband taught him a lesson." Drew smirked and tapped the table with 2 fingers like a drum roll. Before anyone could pass the gravy, I looked at my daughter and smiled, small, careful, the way you smile when a tooth is loose. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. Now let me tell you how this bruise got its receipt. 3 days earlier, Sunday, 6:12 p.m., the garage that still smells like cut pine and motor oil. I'd just clicked the opener, and the door was stuttering halfway down when Drew ducked under. "Just checking the water heater," he said, like the house belonged to his voice. He moved through my space with Jim's swagger, the kind that leans on intimidation when a bill is due. His shoulder cut me off at the workbench. A boot heel clipped. The side of my face, paint cans rattled. The metal corner of the vise caught my cheekbone and burst stars behind my eye. At Edward Hospital, the ER discharge sheet, dated 11/23, said, "Contusion, apply ice Q2H." The nurse handed me a pamphlet about fall hazards. "I didn't fall," I said. She looked at the bruise, then at my hands, and stapled the sheet without arguing. On the ride home in a lift whose heater clicked like a courtroom metronome, I decided to put everything in writing. Monday morning, Emily brought cinnamon rolls in a bakery box and set them next to the framed photo of my wife and me standing in front of this very house the day we paid it off in 2011. Balloons, a hand-painted sign that read, "No more mortgage." "Dad," Emily said, adopting her clipboard voice, "let's be smart and sign the deed to us now. It's better for taxes, less complications." She glanced at the banister I sanded the winter her mother got sick. In her tote, I saw the corner of a florist invoice, $2,800, dated 9/14 River North, peeking out like a lipstick stain. After she left, I called the Naperville Police non-emergency line. Officer Klein arrived with cold air and a careful face. He looked at the dent in the bench where my cheek had met steel, at the scuff on the floor, and at the old drill press with my initials burned into the base. "Paper, not fists," he said, writing down the incident number, NPD 1124A, like a prayer. "If you're pushed, you push back with documents. Documents I have." That night, the kitchen was quiet except for the oven timer I forgot to cancel, dinging every 60 seconds like a conscience. I laid out the ER sheet, then my bank statements, line items I'd trusted Emily to manage for house repairs. $2,500 to Drew F. Training LLC on 10/02, $6,200 to Viral Wellness. I underlined each amount with a ballpoint until the paper depressed. I set my late wife's rosary on the stack and whispered the numbers out loud. "My house is my pension. Every receipt is a bead on a decades-long chain. On Tuesday, I'd decide whether to hand them the deed to keep the peace, or to keep the deed and reclaim the peace." I slept on the couch under a thin throw, and the ring of that oven timer still in my ears, thinking about how silence at a table can cut deeper than a punch in a garage. Tuesday broke brittle and bright the way late November in Naperville does. Sunlight. Like tin on the snowless lawns, oaks rattling their last leaves along Washington Street. I held my coffee in both hands and watched steam rise and disappear, the way resolve rises and disappears when you're old and someone you love calls you a burden. The bruise under my eye had gone from purple to that sickly yellow that makes strangers glance and then pretend they didn't. I could hear the heater kick on, that familiar click I've ignored for years, suddenly sounding like a judge tapping. "A pen." Emily showed up with a white bakery box and a clipboard smile. "Cinnamon rolls," she said, easing past me in her own father's house. She set them next to the framed photo from 2011. My wife and me, under balloon arches, me holding a sign we made together. No more mortgage. Emily tapped the frame with a fingernail. See? You did great. Now it's time to be smart before, anything happens. Her voice softened on the last 3 words, the way people soften when they're about to take something that isn't theirs. Smart how? I asked, even though I already knew her script. Title transfer, she said, brightening as if she'd solved a riddle. We move the deed to me and Drew. No lawyers. We'll save on probate. It's smoother for taxes. She didn't meet my eyes when she said taxes. She looked at the banister I'd spent a winter sanding while my wife napped during chemo. The banister caught light like a river. I caught my breath like a man underwater. A corner of paper peeked from her tote. I knew that color. Salmon with a glossy sheen. What's that? I asked. Oh, she shoved it deeper. Nothing. Vendor thing. A blossom of florist script flashed before it disappeared. I'd seen it yesterday when I counted. $2,800 to Lavender and Loon, dated 9/14, for a brand launch event in River North. Emily used to borrow library books 2 at a time and return them early. Now she borrowed my name and returned it dented. Dad, she said, Drew can bring a notary on Thursday. We can sign at dinner, make it a family moment. A notary at Thanksgiving, I said half to myself. Do we carve the deed before or after the turkey? She laughed like I'd told a joke and left the rolls. When the door shut, I stood, very still, feeling the house decide whether to keep me. The cinnamon rolls were still warm. I threw one away. Then I did the next honest thing. I dialed the bank. Liesl branch, the operator chirped. How can I direct your Luis Ramirez, please? I said. Tell him it's Mr. Hale and it's sensitive. Luis came on with that banker's calm, the tone they teach you to use when you're holding someone's money and someone else's regret. Mr. Hale, can you come in? Don't discuss details over the phone. Today? As soon as you're comfortable. I'll block 15 minutes. I hung up and dry heaved in the sink. Old man dignity, circling the drain with the coffee. Grounds. When I lifted my head, a thin trickle of blood from my nostril had spotted the stainless steel. I rinsed it until the metal shone. Before I left, I did another honest thing. I opened the drawer where my wife kept church candles and pulled out her rosary. I don't pray much, not since the cancer, but the beads have a texture that tells the truth back to you. I threaded them through my fingers and counted to 10 without asking God for anything, which felt like the closest I've come to faith in a while. On my way to the car, Mrs. Daly from next door shuffled down her walk, wrapped in a green cardigan you could see from space. She took one look at my eye and clucked, "Well, ain't that a shiner?" "Garage accident," I said, the lie tasting like freezer burn. "Honey, that's a boot," she said gently, "which is what happens when you live across from a widow who has seen everything twice. Lock your doors." She leaned closer. "And write it down." "I did," I said. "Police report, NPD 1124A. She patted my arm. "Good. Paper is a spine when yours hurts." At the bank, Luis met me at the glass office, with blinds half tilted. He closed them the rest of the way and gestured to the chair. His computer screen reflected in the window, rows of numbers, a map of my trust and my trust's trust in other people. "I need to show you 2 things," I said. I slid across the ER discharge sheet, 1123 Edward Hospital, contusion, and the printout I'd made of the October and November statements, with 2 lines underlined until the paper bruised. $24,500 to Drew F. Training LLC on 10/02. $6,200 to Viral Wellness on 10/19. These were supposed to be for gutters, furnace, roof. My daughter insisted on a dedicated repairs card. Luis clicked. "The card is linked to the joint house repairs sub-account," he said. "Authorized users, you and Emily." He scrolled, sharp eyes moving like a scanner. "Mr. Hale, would you authorize me to place a monitoring flag? It doesn't stop past transactions, but any new transfers over a set amount will freeze pending." "Your confirmation. What's the set amount?" I asked, even though my answer was already yes. "Let's start at 1,000, he said, watching my face. "We can set alerts for anything, even $10 experiments, and I'll print you a simple sheet. No codes, just dates and amounts." "Print it," I said. I wanted paper that spoke the way bullies don't, quiet and permanent. He printed a single page with 4 lines. It looked like a shopping list for a thief. As he handed it to me, he slid over a black cardstock folder. "For your documents," he said. "And consider speaking to an elder law attorney. Clean, lawful options exist that keep the house safe without World War III. I can't advise, but I can suggest. I know someone to call," I lied, and then immediately decided to make it true. When I got home, the garage light was still on. The dent in the workbench had my cheekbones shape. I wiped the bench with a rag that used to be one of my wife's nightgowns, and wondered when I'd started naming the house as "it" instead of "ours." The heater clicked again. I took my phone and did something Priya would later call best practice. I recorded a voicemail to myself. "Tuesday, November 25th, I said, even though it was the 24th. "Grief bends calendars," I corrected it. 24th Naperville. "Emily asked me to sign the deed to her and Drew on Thursday at dinner. I'm saying no. I will consult counsel. I will not confront in person without a witness. I will protect my house, which is my retirement." Then I sat on the bottom step with the black folder on my knees and opened a cinnamon roll with my hands. It was cold now, the icing stiff, and I forced myself to eat it like a communion for people who plan, instead of pray. The sugar grit under my teeth felt like resolve. At dusk, Emily texted, "Drew can bring the notary Thursday. 3 signatures, 10 mins, easy." A second later, "Don't be dramatic about your eye." I didn't reply. Instead, I dialed a number. I found on a card tucked into my church bulletin months ago: Priya Patel, Elder Law and Estates, Jefferson AV. The receptionist said she could see me Wednesday at 10. "Bring documents," she said, "and breathe." "I'll bring both," I said, hanging up. The house creaked the way it does when the temperature drops, wood answering winter. In that sound, I heard the question that's haunted every father since time. How do you protect what you built without losing who you built it for? I placed the ER sheet, the bank printout, and the police incident number into the black folder. I clicked off the garage light, reset the front deadbolt, and slid the chain in place. "Paper, not fists," Officer Klein had said. So I made a promise to my reflection in the dark living room window. Tomorrow, we sharpen the paper. Wednesday morning came in pale and brittle, the kind of light that makes your house look older than you remember. I dressed slow, buttoned down, clean jacket, because I wasn't going to walk into an attorney's office looking like a man who didn't know his worth. The bruise on my cheek had settled into a yellow-brown crescent, a half-moon of humiliation and clarity. I held the black folder under my arm like a shield as I drove down Jefferson Avenue toward Priya Patel's office. A brick building squeezed between a chiropractor and a tax prep kiosk that already had early bird refunds signs in the window. November in Illinois moves fast. People start rushing before the snow even decides to show up. The receptionist buzzed me in. "Mr. Hale, she's ready for you." Priya stood the moment I walked in. She was younger than I expected, mid-30s maybe, but her posture had the quiet authority of someone who wins with preparation, not volume. Her walls weren't plastered with degrees. Instead, they held framed photographs of elderly couples signing documents with relieved smiles. "Sit," she said gently. "Tell me everything." I opened the black folder and laid out the stack like breadcrumbs in the woods. ER discharge sheet, 11/23, contusion. Bank printouts, $2,400, $6,200. The florist invoice, $2,800, peeking out like guilt. Her eyes didn't widen or twitch. She catalogued each item as if assembling a puzzle she already knew the shape of. This is classic undue influence, she said. Text messages. I pulled up Emily's thread and handed her my phone. She read the line. Sign the house over now, Dad. With a small nod. Good. This matters. I'm not trying to punish her, I said. I want her to stop bleeding me dry. And protect your home, she added. Your house is your pension, your legacy. Losing it would mean losing control of your life. She folded her hands. We do this clean. No hidden mics, no illegal recordings. Illinois allows one-party consent for phone calls, so narrate your side. But in-home audio, keep it to common areas you own. And if you ever record her or Drew, make sure you're physically present. No secret devices. I nodded. I'd expected some movie trick, spy pens or something. But the mundane legality of her advice grounded me. This was a paper war, not a gadget one. She pulled out a yellow legal pad and wrote 2 items. Place the home into a land trust, with you as the sole beneficiary. Amend the living trust to exclude any beneficiary who commits financial exploitation or assault. It's quiet. Surgical, she said. You don't tell them. It's filed, it's valid, and it stands no matter how emotional Thanksgiving gets. Thanksgiving, I repeated, tasting irony. They want to bring a notary to dinner. She actually laughed, a quick, sharp sound. Perfect. That means they'll be overconfident. Let them be. You bring documents, they'll bring entitlement. She circled Thursday on her pad with a red pen. Your house will be protected by then. At the bank afterward, Luis ushered me into his glass-walled office. I've placed the fraud flag, he said, turning the monitor so I could see. Any transfer from the house repairs account over $1,000 requires your approval. And I printed this. He slid over a single-page sheet with 4 transactions, bolded dates and amounts. No codes. It looked cleaner than I felt. Luis, I said quietly, I don't know how I let it get this far. You trusted your daughter, he replied. That's not a crime, but ignoring it now would be. Before I left, he went to a drawer and returned with a black cardstock folder. Your documents were sliding around. This will keep them straight. It looks intimidating, I said. Good, he replied. Some people only respect what scares them. On the way home, I stopped at Ace Hardware. I bought a keypad deadbolt, simple, reliable, 69, and scheduled the locksmith for Monday. The clerk, a kid with acne scars and a name tag that read Mason, asked if I needed help loading anything. No, I told him, clutching the deadbolt, but thank you. When I got home, I rehearsed what Priya told me. Narrate your side. So, I called Emily. I'm confirming, I said, voice steady, that you want me to sign the deed Thursday at Thanksgiving dinner. You mentioned Drew could bring the notary. She paused. Yes, it's just practical, Dad. Good, I said, keeping Priya's advice in mind. I'll be prepared. After the call, I placed the deadbolt on the kitchen counter. The old one felt loose when I touched it, as if even the metal was tired of being taken for granted. That night, I sat at the dining table with the black folder in front of me, and for the first time since the bruise bloomed on my face, I felt something like direction, like spine, like the beginning of a boundary. The heater clicked again, softer this time, like punctuation. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow we start fighting with paper. Monday before Thanksgiving greeted me with a sky the color of dirty pewter, the kind of morning where even the streetlights seemed tired. At 7:40 a.m., the locksmith's van rolled into my driveway, exhaust-puffing white clouds that hung in the cold air like ghosts. A young man stepped out, stocky, polite, tool belt jangling. Rike and reset, right? That's right, I said, letting him into the front hall. Deadbolt, garage keypad, and I want a fresh code only I know. He worked quickly, and by 8:10 he handed me a small envelope with 2 silver keys and a printed invoice. $189, dated 11/24. Rekey, front door, reset, garage keypad. I slipped it under the sunflower magnet on my fridge and snapped. A photo with the timestamp visible. Habit now, proof now. As he left, Officer Klein's patrol SUV rolled to a stop in front of my driveway. He climbed out, holding a paper coffee cup, and looked at my bruise, then at the newly installed keypad. Taking precautions, he said. Approval tucked under his mustache. You told me to lean on paper, I reminded him. And locks, he added. Locks count. He stepped into the garage and tapped the dent in the bench with his knuckle. Still lines up with your cheek. I know, I said. Any contact from him? Nothing yet. Officer Klein nodded, took a sip. Good. If anyone shows up. Uninvited call. Don't play hero. Paper, not fists, I echoed. After he drove off, I went inside and laid everything on the dining room table. ER sheet. Bank printouts, florist invoice, police incident number, trust amendment drafts from Priya, a battlefield of paper. Priya called at noon. The amended trust is filed, she said. Your home will be moved into the land trust by Wednesday morning. After that, Emily and Drew have no legal say. None. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. What if they show up demanding answers? Then you do not engage emotionally, she said. You simply state facts. Facts are your armor. I practiced just that out loud in my kitchen, narrating like she taught me. Emily, I'm confirming you requested I sign the deed Thursday. I will review documents first. My voice wavered, so I repeated it until it didn't. That afternoon, I drove to Drew's gym. I didn't go in, I just walked near the front desk as if waiting for someone. That's when I saw it. A red, bold-stamped past due notice half hidden behind a stack of fitness magazines. His name on the top. Roughly cost $200 owed. When he spotted me, he covered the letter with a glossy Holiday Fitness Challenge flyer. You heal fast, old man, he said, smiling with the corners of his mouth but not his eyes. Maybe you're tougher than you look. I shrugged and walked out without rising to the bait. His debt was proof, not motive but pressure. And pressure makes stupid people reckless. When I got home, a manila envelope sat on my porch. No note, just a rubber band around it. Lena, the private investigator Priya hired, didn't believe in small talk. Inside were photos. Drew loading kettlebells into his trunk, Drew standing in my garage doorway Sunday night, and a screenshot of a marketplace listing. My marketplace listing. Vintage drill press, $450. Pickup near Ogden Ave. There. It was my old drill press, the one I'd restored in '98, the one with my initials burned into the wooden base. The photo Lena captured showed my initials clearly, framed by Drew's hands as he tilted the machine for the picture. I touched the burn mark in the photo with my thumb until my skin turned white. He wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing my history. I placed the photos next to the bank printouts and felt something shift inside me. Not rage, direction. A clean, cold line of purpose. I took out Luis's black folder, the cardstock dark and stiff in my hands, and slid every document inside. The folder looked theatrical, almost ominous. And that's when I realized something Priya hadn't had. To tell me, the folder itself was part of the stage, a prop for the reveal, a symbol of the paper war I intended to win. Tomorrow, I would pack it for Thanksgiving. And this time, I wouldn't be the old man with a bruise. I'd be the old man holding proof. Thanksgiving morning arrived steel gray and breathless, the kind of cold that makes the windows hum. I woke before the sun, Bruise throbbing faintly, and stood in the kitchen mixing the sweet potato casserole the way my wife used to. Brown sugar, cinnamon, marshmallows arranged in uneven little clouds. The smell alone could have brought her back for a moment. I let it. At 9:12 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Don't be dramatic about your eye today. The words stung worse than the bruise. Dramatic, as if the dent in the workbench had auditioned for the part, as if the ER discharge sheet dated 11/23 was theatre. I set the phone down and focused on packing the black folder. Priya had drilled me on this part. Facts, not feelings. I laid out every document, checking them like a pilot before takeoff. ER sheet, top, bank printouts, $2,500 and $6,200 highlighted. Florist invoice, $2,800, dated 9/14. Locksmith invoice, $180. Lena's photos, drew with the drill press. Marketplace screenshot, $450. Pickup near Ogden Ave. Certified mail receipt to Emily. Amended trust copy inside. And finally, the notarized deed into the land trust, dated 11/26. The deed wasn't for their eyes, unless they pushed. Priya's note was stuck to its corner. Reveal only if pressured. I added 2 printed stills from my Ring doorbell footage. Drew entering my garage Sunday night, the bottom timeline glowing. They weren't a smoking gun, but in a family of denial, images speak louder than testimony. At 11:30, I drove to Luis's branch. The bank was slow, holiday quiet. Luis spotted me immediately. "Fraud flags are active," he said, lowering his voice. "Any withdrawals over 1,000 trigger an automatic freeze. They can push buttons, but nothing moves till you say yes." "You're saving my home," I said. "No," he replied. "You're saving it. I'm just making sure the math listens." Before I left, he handed me a fresh printout of the flagged items, 4 lines, clean and undeniable. I placed it on top of the stack. Out in the parking lot, I took the matte black envelope from my coat pocket. Thick cardstock, perfectly sized to swallow the folder. I slid the papers in and sealed it with a strip of black gaffer tape. The envelope felt heavier than its parts, like it carried not paper, but leverage. In the car, I practiced the single line I'd prepared in the bathroom mirror. "Read before you speak." I said it again until my voice didn't tremble. Back home, I dressed slowly, clean shirt, dark sweater to hide the swelling. The bruise had settled into a yellow-gray stain, the kind that shows up in family photos like a warning sign nobody wants to talk about. I looked at myself in the mirror and touched the edge of it. "This ends today," I told my reflection. I placed the casserole in a foil tray, then picked up the black envelope with my other hand. One smelled like home. The other smelled like the truth. As I locked the recade deadbolt behind me, I noticed how solid the click felt, like the house finally recognized me again. In the car, I set the casserole on the passenger seat and the envelope on top of it. My past under my future, held together by heat and cardstock. The drive to Emily's felt shorter than usual, probably, because I'd rehearsed every breath of this moment for days. By the time I turned onto her street, I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was ready, and the envelope in my hand promised the kind of Thanksgiving blessing her family would never forget. Emily's house smelled like rosemary, reheated confidence, and the kind of tension you pretend isn't there when company arrives. I walked in with the casserole in one hand and the matte black envelope in the other. The moment the door shut behind me, the warmth of the house felt artificial, like someone turned the thermostat up to hide a draft. Drew greeted me first, sleeves rolled just enough to show off forearms that he thought were a personality. "Hey, champ," he said, giving my bruise a long, satisfied glance. "Looks better." "It will," I replied, setting the casserole down. The dining table was already staged like a magazine spread. Fall leaves, gold-rimmed plates, tall candles. That would be blown out by arguments before the night ended. Family chatted in side conversations, but I could feel eyes darting to my cheek, then away, like they were afraid to make contact with the truth. Football played on mute from the living room, flashes of green and helmets reflecting off a silver-framed mirror that hung above the mantel. Every once in a while, the camera angle caught my bruise. I looked like a warning. Emily appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel like she was hosting a cooking show. "Dad," she said, smiling just a fraction too hard, "glad you made it." "I'm glad you invited me," I answered. I didn't say to my own execution. Dinner started as if the family could outrun gravity. Small talk, forced laughter, kids arguing about roles. But the silence around my bruise grew. You could feel it tightening the edges of the tablecloth. Then Emily raised her glass. "Family is everything," she said. She didn't look at anyone but me. Drew chuckled, tapping his fingers on the table as if signaling a cue. His phone sat face down near his plate. A notification buzzed, lighting the underside for a split second. He ignored it. The turkey was carved. Plates passed, gravy spilled, and still nobody addressed the bruise until Emily put her glass down and said the words I'd been waiting for. "We've been talking, Dad, and it's time. We should sign the house over while you're still with us." She tried to make the last two words sound gentle. They landed like a threat. A fork clinked sharply against a plate. One of the kids froze mid-bite. The air bent. I took a slow breath, reached into my coat, and pulled out the black envelope, not handing it to her, not offering it, just placing it gently on the table beside the cranberry sauce. The matte cardstock sucked in the candlelight like a shadow. Drew tapped the top of it with his knuckle. "What's this?" he smirked. "Homework?" I smiled. Small, surgical. "Something you'll wish you'd studied." Laughter flickered. Around the table, nervous and confused. Emily's face tightened the way it used to when she lied about finishing her homework in middle school. The oven timer in the kitchen dinged, sharp, shrill, perfectly timed. Nobody moved to turn it off. It rang like a bell before a boxing match. Emily swallowed. "Dad, what is that?" "Proof," I said. "And receipts." "Receipts?" she repeated, as if the word itself offended her. "After pies," I said, leaning back. "We exchange receipts." Drew grabbed a drumstick like he was holding a gavel. "Let's clear the air now," he said, loud enough to make the candles flicker. My heart thudded once, heavy and final. Then everything inside me went calm. I slid the envelope across the table until it stopped in front of Emily. Gasps. Stiff. Shoulders. Fork set down. Her hand hovered over the envelope, unsure whether to touch it like a gift or a grenade. "Go on," I said softly. "Read before you speak." The spotlight tightened. The air thinned. Emily's fingers peeled the tape slowly, as though she already sensed this wasn't going to be the kind of family moment she and Drew had planned. She didn't know it yet, but this Thanksgiving, she wasn't carving the turkey. She was carving the truth, hand off, and as she opened that black envelope, she started slicing straight into her own lies. Emily peeled the black gaffer tape back like she was trying to defuse a bomb. The envelope opened with a soft crack, the kind of sound paper makes right before it ruins someone's holiday. Every pair of eyes at the table leaned in, breath held, forks paused mid-air. Even the kids got quiet, sensing the adults had crossed into the land where whispers go to die. The first page she pulled out was the ER discharge sheet from Edward Hospital. Dated 11/23, the bolded word contusion sat near the top like a bruise. Of its own, she made a scoffing sound. "Oh my God, Dad, it was an accident. Why would you bring this here?" Drew chimed in before I could speak. "Yeah, garage stuff happens. You tripped." I kept my voice even. "I didn't trip." Emily tried to move on, flipping the page like it personally offended her. Next came the bank printout. Luis's clean, simple list, with each suspicious withdrawal bolded. $24,500 to Drew F. Training LLC, $6,200 to Viral Wellness. Both pulled from the house repairs account she'd insisted we create. The room inhaled. Aunt Carla leaned in, eyes narrowing. "Emily, what is that?" Emily's ears flushed pink. "He doesn't understand how banks work. I handle his stuff." "You mishandle it," I corrected. She shot me a glare but kept flipping. The next items were Lena's photos. The first showed Drew loading kettlebells into his trunk, harmless. The second showed him in my garage doorway the night he checked the water heater. The third, oh, that third one, stopped him cold. It was a perfect, crisp shot of my drill press. Posted for sale online. Vintage drill press, 450 pickup near Ogden Ave. The initials GH burned into the wooden base. My initials were visible in Lena's telephoto shot like a signature from the past. A cousin whispered, "Oh, damn." Drew swallowed hard. "I was, moving it for him." "That's funny," I said, sliding out the screenshot Lena captured from the listing, "because the username matches your Instagram handle." Emily's breath hitched. She moved to the next document with shaking hands. The florist invoice, $2,800 for a September brand launch event. Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. She flipped again and landed on the locksmith. Receipt, $189, dated 11/24, rekeying my front door and resetting the garage keypad. "You changed the locks," she snapped, voice cracking in front of the whole family. "On family?" "On thieves," I said, "and on people who hit me. It was an accident," she spat, the words breaking apart. "It wasn't an accident," I replied, and then, before she could deny it again, I reached into the envelope and slid out 2 printed stills from the Ring doorbell. The ones showing Drew entering my garage Sunday evening, the timeline glowing under his figure. More murmurs. Emily's hands shook as she sifted through the documents, trying to find one that would save her from the others. Then she reached the certified mail receipt, the unopened envelope addressed to her, postmarked with the tracking number, containing a copy of the amended living trust disinheriting anyone who exerted pressure or committed assault. I watched her face twist, then freeze. She knew this wasn't a bluff. Finally, she landed on the document she prayed wasn't there. The deed. Her voice wobbled. This isn't. To us. "No," I said, "it isn't." She stared at the next line. Title transferred to Land Trust. Beneficiary Gregory Hale. Date November 26. "You put the house in a trust?" she choked out. "I put my home," I corrected, "where your entitlement can't reach it." Drew slammed his hand on the table hard enough to rattle the candles. "You can't do that." I calmly picked up my phone and tapped the screen. Luis answered on speaker. "Yes, Mr. Hale?" I kept my gaze on Drew. "Luis, can you confirm the status of the fraud flags on my accounts?" Luis replied, crisp and professional. "Any new transfers from the house repairs account will be automatically frozen until approved by you. There were attempts this morning, but they did not go through." Gasps erupted around the table. Emily shot a panicked look at Drew. I didn't. You tried to take more money? Today? On Thanksgiving?" Drew's phone buzzed on the table at that exact moment, timed like God himself had cued it. The screen lit up for a second. Past due notice, immediate attention required. He slapped the phone face down again. The humiliation hit him like a wave. Emily covered her mouth. Her voice broke into a whisper. "Dad, this is humiliating." "Confession usually is," I said softly. "Silence, the kind only truth can make. You invited me here to sign over my home," I continued. "Instead, I brought evidence." I slid one final document across the table, a thick packet with a tab. Temporary restraining order. Petition prepared. Emily stared at it like it was a weapon. "We'll continue this conversation Monday," I said. At the courthouse, Drew stood abruptly, chair scraping the hardwood like a scream. "This is bullshit." "No," I said calmly, "this is paper. And you taught me that paper is stronger than fists." Eyes rounded. Jaws dropped. Emily folded forward, elbows on the table, hands over her face. Not a single person spoke. The truth sat between us, heavy as turkey and cold as winter. Handoff. By Monday, Justice would be more than a performance at a dinner table. It would be recorded, stamped, and enforceable by law. Monday morning came grey and sharp, the kind of Illinois cold that cuts straight through a coat and into your sternum. I parked outside the DuPage County Courthouse, watching my breath fog on the windshield while I rehearsed the facts the way Priya taught me. Clean, simple, emotionless. Paper, not fists. Priya arrived in a navy coat, hair pinned back, folders tucked under her arm, like she was delivering verdicts, not carrying them. "You ready?" she asked. "As ready as a man gets," I said. Inside, the courthouse smelled like old coffee, winter coats, and disinfectant, the same scent every courthouse I've ever seen carries, as if justice needs bleach to function. We checked in for the TRO hearing. Emily showed up 5 minutes later, alone. No Drew. Her eyes were puffy, shoulders hunched like she'd aged 10 years since Thanksgiving. She walked toward me slowly. "Dad, can we talk before we go in?" "No," Priya answered for me. "Not without counsel. Please take a seat." Emily swallowed hard and sat on the opposite bench. She held a folder too, but it was thin, very thin. Mine was thick and heavy, paper-clipped, tabbed, and devastating. When the bailiff called our names, I stood first. Inside the hearing room, everything felt quieter than expected. No jury, no theatrics, just a judge with a pen, a clock ticking above her head, and paperwork that carried weight. Priya opened with the facts. ER discharge sheet from 1123. Officer Klein's incident report, number NPD 1124A. Photos from Lena showing Drew entering my garage. Bank withdrawals totaling $30,700 labeled training and wellness. The locksmith invoice dated 11/24, confirming I secured my home after an assault. Emily didn't deny the numbers. She couldn't. They were typed in ink older than her excuses. When Priya submitted the evidence packet, the judge skimmed it with the clipped efficiency of someone who's seen every kind of family war and still believes in boundaries. Emily finally spoke. "Your Honor, he's my father. I was trying to help him manage things. He gets confused sometimes." Priya raised an eyebrow without looking at her. "If he's confused, why did you not bring a single medical record to support that?"
Claim.
Emily blinked. Her silence was a confession. The judge tapped her pen once, thoughtful, decisive. "Given the documentation, I am granting the temporary restraining order against Mr. Fletcher. Drew Fletcher." She signed the form with 3 quick strokes. "He is barred from contacting Mr. Hale or entering his property. Ms. Hale, you are prohibited from accessing any of his financial accounts. Any misuse going forward will result in further action." Emily bowed her head. "Yes, Your Honor." I didn't smile. Justice isn't a grin, it's an exhale. Outside the courtroom, Priya pulled me aside. "Next step, petition for accounting on the House Repairs Fund. Luis's logs will attach cleanly." She sounded almost pleased, like a surgeon after a successful operation. We filed the petition immediately. While the clerk stamped the document, something inside me unclenched, something that had been bound since the night Drew stepped into my garage. On the drive home, I stopped at Home Depot and bought a new ring chime. Small purchase, but symbolic. My house needed a new voice at the door. Back home I installed it, then hung a sign beside the recade front door. "All visitors must be invited." At 6 p.m. I called Emily. I narrated my side of the call, exactly as Priya instructed. "You can visit the grandkids here," I said, "when Drew is not present. You will reimburse the $2,800 florist charge and the $6,200 wellness charges by December 10th. This is not punitive. It's accountability." I understand," she whispered. Her voice cracked like thin ice. After the call, I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of lukewarm tea. My house was quiet, secure, mine. A text came through from Lena, a single photo of Drew leaving the gym with a cardboard banker's box in his arms, shoulders slumped, future uncertain, a fitting image. Consequence captured in 12 megapixels. Hand off. Now that justice was set in motion, all that remained was understanding what was owed, what was forgiven, and what I still had left to protect. The house felt different after the courthouse. Quieter, but not the lonely kind of quiet. More like a held breath finally released. Even the heater's click sounded gentler, less like a judge tapping a pen, and more like a familiar metronome keeping time in a home that was mine again. I set my late wife's rosary back on its nail in the pantry. It had hung there for years, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like a relic of a life I'd already lost. It felt like an anchor. I stood there longer than I meant to, fingers tracing the beads, thinking of everything I almost let slip away. That Saturday, Emily texted at 10:04 a.m. We're outside? No emojis, no tone, just a sentence trying hard not to break. I opened the door to find her standing on the porch with the kids behind her, small hands clutching tote bags full of coloring books and stuffed animals. Emily's shoulders were stiff, but her eyes were softer than they'd been in months, maybe years. She held out a sealed envelope. "This is the first part," she said. Inside was a cashier's check for $9,000, neatly folded between 2 sheets of paper. Proof, real, tangible proof of accountability. The check didn't fix everything, not by a mile, but it was a step she'd avoided taking until the world forced her to look down. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words were small, but they were honest. For the first time, I believed her. "Conditions stay in place," I said gently. "Counseling receipts instead of apologies. Patterns instead of promises." She nodded. "I know." The kids squeezed past her legs and barreled into the living room, their laughter ricocheting off the walls as if trying to clean the air. I followed them, and they immediately asked for hot chocolate. I made 3 mugs with too many marshmallows, just the way their grandmother used to. "Grandpa," Jonah said, tugging at my sleeve, "is your drill thing back?" He meant the drill press, the one Drew tried to sell. "It's back where it belongs," I told him. I led them to the basement. When I flicked on the light, the drill press stood there like a loyal dog, scarred but home. The kids inspected it wide-eyed, touching the initials burned into the wood. "What does that spell?" Lily asked. "That," I said, "is the mark of someone who builds things." "Can we build something?" Jonah asked. "Sure," I replied. "How about a shelf shaped like a boat?" Both kids gasped, as if I'd offered them treasure. They ran upstairs shouting about pirates, leaving me alone with the machine. I rested a hand on the drill press. The metal was cold but familiar. I hadn't realized until that moment how much of myself I'd allowed to be taken, or nearly taken, by people who claimed they loved me after they left that afternoon. I sat on the bottom stair, the same spot where I'd sat the night I counted the missing money, the same spot where I'd felt old, scared and ashamed. But this time, I felt something else entirely. I felt sturdy. The house hummed gently, a kind of homecoming sound. I wrote 3 lines on a yellow pad, just like I'd promised myself I would. What was taken, what was owed, what was mine to keep. Revenge had never been the point. Justice had. Boundaries had. The house wasn't just wood and mortgage memories. It was the place where my wife and I built our life, one stubborn nail at a time. It was the place where my grandchildren still felt safe enough to run wild and dream loud. And I wasn't done yet. Hand off, one more ledger remained, my estate. Not rewritten in anger, but in clarity, the kind that comes only after surviving the storm your own blood brings to your door. By December 15th, the recorder's stamp hit the land trust deed with a satisfying thunk, one of those small, bureaucratic sounds that somehow feels louder than any argument. Priya mailed me a duplicate copy inside a cream envelope, her handwriting on a sticky note clipped to the front. "Sleep now." And for the first time in months, I did. That same day, Luis called. "Update on your accounts, Mr. Hale." His voice had that hint of satisfaction bankers get when the numbers finally obey them. The house repairs sub-account is now locked to view only for Emily. She no longer has withdrawal or card access. And one more thing, he paused. I braced myself. The $24,500 transfer to Bruise LLC has been reversed under the bank's fraud protection policy. We reached out to him for verification. He failed to provide documentation. Funds returned. I sat down at my dining table, hand over my mouth. "Luis, that money was my winter budget." "It's yours again," he said. "Every penny." After the call, I walked the house slowly, room by room, touching the things that mattered. The porch swing chain my wife used to tap with her foot. The basement banister I rebuilt when Emily broke her arm at 8. The picture on the hallway wall of my wife, smearing cake on my nose at our 25th anniversary. Nothing looked different, but everything felt steadier. Like the house exhaled too. A knock came around 3 p.m. Officer Klein stood on the porch with hat, hair and a surprisingly warm grin. "Greg," he said, hands in his pockets. "Thought you'd want to know. Fletcher's moved. Word is the gym let him go. New job an hour north." "Good," I said quietly. "Distance is healthy." "You look taller," he added with a smirk. "Maybe I am." He gave me a small salute and returned to his cruiser. That evening I opened my safe. The garage keypad code was written on a slip of paper inside an envelope labeled, "For Emily, after 1 year of clean conduct." That was Priya's idea. Accountability with a path forward. Restoration without erasing the damage. I sealed the envelope again and placed it back, inside the safe. It didn't feel like weakness. It felt like stewardship. The next morning at church, Mrs. Daly squeezed my elbow. "You're glowing," she whispered. I chuckled. "It's just relief." "No," she insisted, patting my arm. "It's a man who finally remembered his worth." On the walk home, snow began to fall. Small flakes at first, then steadier. The first real snow of December. It coated the driveway, softening the sharp lines of the shovel leaning against the siding. Inside, I made coffee and sat at the table with my updated estate plan laid out in front of me. Not vengeful, not punitive, just clear. A map for people I loved, even the ones who'd forgotten how to love me back. I was almost finished when a thought struck me. There was still one conversation left to have. Not legal, not confrontational, not tactical. A human conversation. A booth. A pizza, a father and a daughter. Lou Malnati's on Ogden, the place Emily and I used to go to when she was a teenager, freshly heartbroken over a boy who didn't deserve her. That booth held history. It could hold healing. I picked up the phone and texted her. "Dinner this week, just us?" She replied within 5 minutes. "Yes, I'd like that." I closed the estate folder, placed it gently in the black envelope that had started this whole transformation, and felt something settle inside me. Not victory, not revenge, alignment, handoff. And so, the week before Christmas, I walked into a booth at Lou Malnati's to tell my daughter what boundaries really look like and what forgiveness costs. Lou Malnati's on Ogden smelled exactly the way healing should smell. Warm butter crust, garlic, and something honest, simmering beneath it. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose the same corner booth Emily and I used to sit in when she was 16 and furious at the world for reasons teenagers never fully explain. Back then she'd slam her soda and say, "Nobody listens to me," and I'd say, "I'm listening, start there." Tonight I wasn't sure whether she'd speak at all. She walked in wearing a grey coat and tired eyes, not puffy like last. Weak, not angry like Thanksgiving, just human. She slid into the booth across from me, her hands wrapped around a crumpled napkin like it was a lifeline. "Dad," she said. Her voice didn't waver. "Thank you for meeting me." "I'm glad." "You came." A waitress approached, recognized my face, and smiled. "Your usual deep dish." I nodded. Emily blinked at that. Maybe remembering how many times we'd sat here before her world grew too loud for truth. When the waitress left, Emily set 3 slips of paper on the table. Counseling receipts, the dates lined up in tidy little rows, 1202, 1209, 1216. "I've been going," she said quietly. "I thought you'd want proof." I nodded, not out of triumph, out of respect. "Thank you," she exhaled shakily. "I picked Drew because he looked certain, strong, like someone who could protect me." She paused. "But I stayed because it kept me from asking what I owed. I liked blaming you for everything. The honesty hit me harder than the punch Drew gave me in the garage." "Emily," I said, "you're not the first person to choose someone loud over someone steady. Your mother did it too once, when she was young. Being wrong isn't failure. Staying wrong is." Her eyes reddened. "I don't want to stay wrong." The deep dish arrived, bubbling hot. We each took a slice, though neither of us touched it. Right away, I reached into my coat and pulled out a smaller black envelope, thinner than the one that detonated Thanksgiving, but unmistakably connected. She stared at it, breath caught. "Don't worry," I said with a small smile. "This one doesn't bite." She opened it slowly. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and a printed pattern. The pattern was simple, a boat-shaped shelf, traced in pencil, the same one the kids had asked for. Under it, I'd written a timeline. Saturdays, 10-2. Visits here. Drew barred by court. Order, milestones reviewed every 3 months. Her lip trembled. "You're giving me time with the kids?" "I'm giving you structure," I said gently. "Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors that stay locked until the person on the other side learns to knock." A tear dropped onto the envelope. She laughed once, small, embarrassed, and wiped her face with the napkin. "I'm sorry for everything," she whispered. "I know," I said, "but I'm not restoring trust because you apologized. I'm restoring it because you're doing the work." The waitress refilled our waters without interrupting. Life kept moving around us, families laughing, servers rushing, forks clinking, while we sat in the quiet middle of something breaking open. When the bill came, I paid in cash. No drama, no scorekeeping. We walked out into the December evening. Snow dusted the parking lot like powdered sugar. Emily hugged herself against the cold. I put a hand on her shoulder, not to comfort, but to anchor. "I want you in my life," I told her, "but only the version of you who honors the truth." "I can do that," she said. "I want to do that." On my way out, I passed a mirror near the bar. For the first time since Thanksgiving, my bruise was completely gone. Big, skin smooth, unmarked, I touched the place where the yellow-purple blotch used to be and felt something unexpected. Freedom. Outside, the air tasted like lake wind and clove, crisp, clean, earned. I whispered the one line that carried me through every slammed door, every forged receipt. Every night the house creaked under pressure not its own. "You didn't lose me. You gave me away." And then, quietly as the snow fell around us, "Now I take myself back." If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you're listening at night, set your thermostat the way you like it. No one else gets a vote.